Well, the first time I heard of 9/11, I was taking over my first classroom in the middle school. I was coming in with all my items, and all of a sudden I'm watching everyone run into rooms, and they were watching these buildings fall. And I was like, what's going on? They said 2 planes crashed into the World Trade Centers. And one building was falling down. This was about 8:20 in the morning. And I was like shocked, because those were the 2 tallest buildings in the 2 of the tallest buildings in the country.
I was in my classroom on my prep, and my husband called me and he asked me, what are you doing? And I said, I'm just like sitting at my desk relaxing. And he said, did you hear about New York City? And when he told me, I couldn't believe it, and I went on the computer, on the internet, and I was just flabbergasted. I could not believe that that had happened. It was shocking. It just scared me so much to think that that had happened in our country. What made me sad was that there was a student whose mom was supposed to go on a business trip to New York that day and actually be right there at the World Trade Center. There was also a teacher at Tartan whose children had gone on a vacation to New York City, and they were hanging out with their siblings right there at the World Trade Center, so she had no idea what was going on. I found out later that the mother had missed that trip. She didn't go, so she was fine. And the teacher here at Tartan was able to find out that her kids were fine. But it was such a shock to me. I have to tell you, though, that in the rest of my day, when I went into my classes, everybody wanted to talk about it. And I just said, you know what? They have come in and they have done this to our country, and I'm not going to let them also take away your education. So I taught badly probably that day, but I just needed to have some normalcy.
You know, I remember being assistant principal down at Park High School and I had a TV in the main office, and at first we just heard that a plane had crashed into the one trade tower, and you know, we were wondering what was going on. I remember thinking, well, you know, what happened? Was this some sort of weird accident? I remember hearing kind of history buff that a plane crashed into the Empire State Building during World War II, so I thought, okay, this is some weird accident. Then we're sitting there watching that, and the second one flew into the second tower, and then you knew, you were just like, oh man, what's going on? So that's what I remember. I just remember first thinking that, oh, what happened with this weird accident? Then as soon as that happened, I just remember thinking, man, something bad's going on. So that's my main recollection.
I was down in room 6 where Mr. Strub is now, and I remember I had students that said something happened. And everybody wanted to get on the internet and find out what was going on. I think it was second period, and they finally convinced me we should turn on the computer and see what was happening.
I remember walking into the media center and the TV was on and watching it, and just not being able to stop watching. It was overwhelming. Disbelief.
It was really strange. I was actually student teaching. It was my first time, and I was the first week in a class, and I had some students come in and explain kind of this crazy stuff, and I didn't understand what was going on, and I hadn't heard about it. We didn't have, kind of the access to the internet and things like that you would have in a classroom. I went through the whole day just kind of hearing these rumors about something happening and not knowing what it was until, I got home and turned on the radio, turned on the news, and could hear about it then. It was, pretty frightening at that point.
I had heard about it when I left my classroom for a second to grab a copy, and Mr. Rutledge actually said, "What's happening out in New York?" And I remember saying, nothing, and turned on a TV in my classroom, and it was just as that second plane went into the World Trade Towers. I can't really describe the emotions in the class. We were all shocked. And then all of a sudden the students, it was just clicking, I've got relatives in New York and I got to call home and I've got to get out of here. It was just a mad rush of people needing to touch base with their families. I've never experienced anything like that. And we were glued to the set then for the rest of the 3-4 hours. Students weren't even leaving class. Most of them just stayed in there even though the bells were ringing. And just watching that, it was an incredible experience to to have to not only help students process it, but I'm also processing it at the same time, and what's going to happen next. So.
I remember 9/11. My car was in the shop, so I was getting a ride to school, and we knew that something had happened because of, there was no music playing on the radio. There was a lot of talk radio, and we were kind of searching through the channels. And when I was dropped off, I walked onto the campus, and it just seemed, it was very eerie because all of the students were very quiet and huddled up together, and I had to ask them, what's going on? What happened on campus? And they said, oh, you didn't hear what happened in New York? And I said, no. And that's when I found out about it, and I went into a teacher's room, and they had the TV on, and that's how I found out. And we spent the rest of the school day counseling students, kind of sitting and monitoring and trying to find out, what really happened. There were all kinds of rumors. No one had taken any credit for it yet, and just kind of monitoring and just being very, very scared and nervous about, what will happen later. And that, the feeling of fear is the major memory that I have.
Well, I was shocked. I think another word that comes to mind is confused. I didn't really know at first who did it. I mean, there were a lot of rumors, and it's the first time in our history where we were attacked in this way. In fact, 3,000 Americans died. It was worse than Pearl Harbor in terms of number of people that were killed. So I think shock, I think confused. I think I was also very angry that we were attacked and invaded. So those were my initial reactions.